In this tutorial, we're going to be showing how to use the existing QSControl global presets and masters and configuration designs and create a custom Qes Creator screen so that your end user, your customers, don't have to be bothering themselves with all the intricacies of Venue Manager, but instead have a nice graphical and simple user interface for their system. In the earlier tutorials, we had designed a system, a very simple system that had a basis 922 AZ, which we called the left rack. Right now it says it's unmapped because I'm in design mode and I haven't actually attached these designs to live equipment yet. And I had another basis 922 UZ for the right rack. A very, very simple design for them. The design for the left rack came in as 2 channels of audio from a CD player going immediately to a gain block. The output of the gain block was actually 2 different channels. The left channel feeding both amplifier channels on the left rack. The right channel of my gain block actually went out as a CobraNet feed, and that ended up coming down to a the other rack, the slave base. I want to move it down to this other panel so we can compare them side by side. And in this configuration file, that bundle came back in as a channel which we'd call right background music. And looking at the design, that came in, and I'm going to zoom in to see all of that. In fact, let me just get rid of all the unused blocks and do a zoom to fit. And there we go, that we've zoomed in. So now that's the right channel rack, and that shows the right signal coming in and just immediately going right back out to the local amplifier channels for that particular zone or that particular location. So that's our basic design. However, we don't want the end user to have to navigate all these strange looking screens to them. They want something nice, straightforward, and intuitive, and that's what the purpose of Qes Creator is. So I'm going to launch and we also made some global presets that fired off different commands, all amps on, all amps off, and so on. And we also made a master level control that if you look at the master level control, you'll see that it has all 4 amp channels in question. So if I pop open these 2 levels, for example, and bring them visible, you'll see that they go up and down with our master level. I have to do this a little differently. Here, we'll do it this way. These are the same outputs. There we go. And now if I adjust this level, you'll see that the 2 channels on the bottom of the screen, which are the same as these 2 channels. How do I know that? Because the master keeps a list, and it's coming from the right rack from a config called slave, and its output gains 1 and 2. So that's what our configuration is. We also have the first 2 channels of the left rack assigned to that same master. So we're going to make all of this come together now in a Qes Creator screen, custom screen and panel. And we launch Qes Creator from this little icon right here. And that lets me open up Qes Creator. You can also get to it from the, if I didn't have that open, you can get to it from the View menu and launch Qes Creator. Does the exact same thing. I think it also is on the window. I'm sorry, it's in the Tools menu, launch Qes Creator. Any one of those methods brings up this Qes Creator window. Now, this Qes Creator window is nothing more than a palette of which I can put objects on, such as meters and buttons and knobs and sliders or faders and various types of indicators, and then even put a bitmap image or a JPEG or a GIF file, whatever I want for pictures here. I can have multiple panels. By default, there's only 1 panel, and it's actually called default. Let's start by naming that panel, shall we? So instead of the name, I'm going down here to the Properties window, And I'm going to say, all right, instead of calling that panel default, we're going to do a church. For this example, I'm just going to call it church. And so I'm going to call this the main panel. And for this main panel, we want to place a picture on here. And there is a background color property, a background image property that I am allowed to navigate around and find bitmaps, GIF, JPEGs, PNGs, and so on. Well, it happens that on my desktop, I have a folder which I call Project Assets. I recommend that you make a folder for every project you do that does contain all of the assets, whether those assets are image files, emails, Excel spreadsheets, text documents, CAD files, whatever is related to that project. Keep them all located in one folder so you can get to them, and keep that folder with that project as you make a backup copy to a CD or something like that. You keep them all together. Well, in this particular example, I've already built a picture which looks like this, and it's a nice floor plan layout of a hypothetical church. Could be any building, right? And I'm using a floor plan. We're not limited to floor plans. You could use photos. You could use CAD files. Now, we can't import a CAD file directly, like a DXF or a DWG file, but most CAD programs can certainly export bitmaps or JPEGs or PNG files or something of that sort. And there's certainly plenty of editor programs and converter programs that can take a DXF file and convert it into a bitmap and so on. So this gives you a very graphical screen, and we're going to keep it simple. I'm just going to place some sort of control, which we're going to call a hotspot, over this area right here, that if the user clicks on this part of the screen, he's going to bring up control screens for the right side of the venue. And if he clicks on this side, he's going to bring up the control screens for the left side of the venue. And we'll add other buttons and do some things here to navigate around to show you what I can do with that. So let's make those other screens. The first thing I'm going to do then is I'm going to go ahead and create a new panel. And this one's going to be called Left Speaker Controls. And I'll say OK to that one. And you see that you can only see one part of it, but that's okay. For our purposes, we know exactly what it is. And I might as well go ahead and make another one called Right Speaker Controls. Now, on the left speaker control screen, rather than put a photo there, I'm just going to paste objects from Venue Manager. So I'm just going to click on this button to switch back to Venue Manager, or I could just move the window out of the way if I wanted to. And let's go to the left channels, shall we? And the ones I'm interested in, I'm going to close out this bottom objects down here. I don't need to see this for right now. I want to be able to see my whole screen. So all the objects that I'm interested in for the left channel is that mute button, those two groups of sliders and text objects. Unfortunately, in this version of Venue Manager, I cannot bring in impedance, spot position, or temperature from here, but we'll be able to do that in future releases. I'll bring in the clip, the protect, the meter that I'm currently looking at, which happens to be voltage meter at that scale, and this amplifier button here, and also whether the amplifier is turned on or off. This is the amp status or the amp monitor button right there. So those are all the objects that I'm going to grab. I selected all those by holding the Shift key down, or the Control key will do, either one will do it. Right click, copy. Now I'll go back to the Qes Creator panel and paste them right onto that panel. It's going to warn me that some controls are going to be pasted outside the panel area. I'm going to say OK. The reason I can say that is because they're all still selected, and it's warning me that some of them have dropped off the screen. So you see them down there, they kind of came in like that. But since they're all still selected, I can move them as a group. So that's fine. I'll just go with that. You know what? I've changed my mind. I'm going to get rid of this panel and delete that panel from the system. I think you just hit the delete. There it is under the file menu. Delete panel. I'm not often deleting panels, so that's why it didn't make any sense to me. So I delete that panel, and it's going to warn me if I delete it, it's going to be undoable. So you want to make sure that the panel you want to delete is the foremost panel. And I'm going to change the label of this one rather than left. I'm just going to make this be speaker controls. In fact, I'll even call it levels. There it is, speaker levels. Because I'm going to go ahead and put all 4 channels on here on this one screen just for sake of speed. So go back to Venue Manager. Let's grab my other 2 channels that I'm interested in, which instead of coming from the CD source, which is my left rack, I want to get from the slave rack. And I want to go into this panel. And I'll do the same thing. I'll select all the objects that I'm interested in. I'm told that in future releases we may be able to just select all with one click, but that doesn't exist yet. So again, I'm going to copy these and go back into Venue Manager and paste them here. I'll get the same warning about some controls might be out of the area. That's okay. I'm grabbing them all as a group, and now they're all together. Now, I purposely didn't line them up. I might want to do something like this. Take all of those objects and make the top of them align. So now they're all lined up with each other. And I could do that for all of these objects just for sake of speed. I'm just going to manually move things where I want them to be. Get them close enough. I think you get the idea. I'll grab these, bring them up as a group, and then these specific ones here. Notice that when you select something, you don't have to totally encapsulate it. As long as the selection rectangle is at least touching the object, it will select those objects. All right, now, I know that this is the left side. In fact, I know that that's the far left speaker, center left, center right, and far right. I know that because I'm the one that created this. It would be helpful to maybe let my customer know that. Let me just spread these out a little bit to give me a little bit of room to put labels where I want to. Let's also line up the centers of those objects, and I'll do the same thing to these. Line up the centers of those on their vertical centers, just to kind of dress things up a little bit. And there we go. And maybe even put something like a square or a rectangle around the groups of channels that are related to each other. Both of these are the left side, and I'll copy that with Control C, or I can right click on the object and say copy. Notice that that square is, even though it looks like it's transparent, it's really a solid block, which is critical because that means it's in front of all these objects. I have to move it backwards in a moment, but I'll do it to both of them together so that they're both aligned. So Control C, copied it, and then click on the screen, Control V to paste the new one down, get that one right next to it. There's my 2 blocks highlighting that. I'll select that one, and I'll say send those to the back so that they're behind my control objects. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to control anything because there'd be this block in front of my controls. So let's put some labels on here that mean something. So I have a label object here, and let's call this left side. Notice it's writing the name here, but until I hit the Enter key, it won't appear in the actual label itself. Oh, that was the control name. I want that to appear in the actual text itself. Here we go. There we go. And I could do the same thing. I'm just going to control, right click, copy, paste, and of course I have to change the label of this one. And you can use the up-down arrows to fine-tune where blocks are. And that one is going to be the right side. Alright, so there's my two zones that I'm interested in. Now it probably would be good too to make all of these controls. I don't want a big white panel popping up with only these two controls in it. So let me see if I change the width and the height of this panel. Now I have to make sure I click on the panel, not on the object. The object has its own height and width properties. I'm interested in the height and width of the panel. So I click on this. It is the panel called speaker levels. That's what we called it. By default, 600 by 800. But let's go to maybe a 300 width. Oh, that was the height. Nope, 300 is too small. Let's go to 400. See what does that look like. Yeah, it's getting better. How about 500? 450. There we go. And then width, if that's 450, I probably want 300 on this width. Hey, that was a pretty good guess. So 300 for that panel width, and that's the size of that panel is going to be. Now, how do we fire up this panel? I dragged all these controls on it. I'm going to go to the main screen, and I'm just going to put a hotspot if they click anywhere in this general vicinity. I can do two hotspots or just do one big one. Doesn't really matter. Let's just, for sake of speed, let's just put one big one on there. I click this object here, which is link hotspots together, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle in the general vicinity. It has placed an object that is kind of a tinted window, tinted panel, and I can resize it, do whatever I need to do to make it fit the area that I want. But that's good enough where it is. So I want to click on this, so it's selected, and then I want it to cause an action to occur. I want it to link to the other panel that we created called speaker levels, and I'm going to make that one, instead of just flipping over to the other panel, like going back and forth between two panels, instead I'm going to make it pop up as a standalone floating window. It's going to be a pop-up window. If I wanted to, I could even make it fire off one of our global presets that we've already created. I don't need that for this example. We'll do that in a moment. So that's all I really need for that screen there. Speaking of global presets, let's put some global presets on this screen. Let's make a text object here. Let's just say, oops, I clicked wrong there. Let's stretch it. There we go. Okay. So the text is default label. We don't want it to say that. We want to say click for full volume. Hit the enter key, and here I've created this text block now, and it has some color properties to it. Text color, the border property, the border width. If we wanted, for example, we want to make the border be say 3, and we'll make the border color, I got a list of objects. So let's see, colors, individual colors, web-based colors, system colors. You have a whole choice of colors. Let's just make the border be, oh, I don't know, purple. And let's make the background color be a very light rose color for that object. So there's my text object. And I got a button now. This will appear as a button to the user. Click for full volume. Let's make another one. I'm just going to copy it, paste it into here, and I'm going to change the text of this to say not full volume. I'm going to make this one say medium volume. And let's do it again. And let's go low volume. All right. So I've got 3 buttons, and let's say, for example, they were all misarranged like that. I could make all 3 of those, line their top edge, and let's make sure that they're equally distributed among themselves. And that centers everything up for us really nice. So I've got three buttons. Maybe I don't want them exactly there. I can grab them as a group, and maybe I'll drag them down here. Now, how do we make them do something? There's no direct ability to fire off with a text object, to fire off a global preset. However, I can again put a hotspot over each one of these. So I'll put a hotspot, a clear, transparent hotspot. The user won't even know it's there. We'll know it's there. And that one is going to be, instead of linking to a screen, we're just going to make it recall a preset. And this is going to be loud. And I'll make another one right over top of that. I'm going to make it a little oversized just so you can see it's different. I'll do the same to this one just so you know it's there. So you realize those are 2 different objects. You don't have to. You can be as neat as you want to be there. This one here is recalling medium. And of course we're going to have a third one for my low volume. Alright, now we did that. Let's go back to my speaker level. I decided I want to add something to this here. How about a master level control? We can either put it here, or put it here, or put it in both places. So how do we do that? Let me go back to Venue Manager, and I'll go to the all speaker level master that we created. I will copy that and paste that into my Venue Manager application. Excuse me, my Qes Creator application. Let's see, where do I want that slider to be? I know what I'll do. I'll paste it on there first. I'll move these. Oops. Got to grab them as a pair. There we go. I'll bring those in a little bit tighter. Like so. And let's change this, instead of a slider object, let's change it to a knob. Now, how do we change it to a knob? Rather than pasting it directly onto the screen as I did there, it's still in my clipboard. I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to go and place a knob on here, like, oh, maybe this knob. I'll put it up here. And I'm going to paste into, and did you see a little red dot went away there? I'll show you that again. Let me break the link. Normally there's a little red mark when nothing has been assigned to this knob. I'm going to assign, got to select it first, I'm going to assign to that knob the master fader that's still in my clipboard. And now it's been assigned, and it automatically jumps to the same level as my master. We can make that knob a little bit bigger, change the size of it to, say, medium, or maybe large would even be better. And let's go ahead and add marks around the outer rim, change the range so I can just see the range at all times. And how about the actual numerical value that's there? Now, if you want to see this in action, you could actually test right now. Can't see it on this screen because my screen resolution is so low. I could actually test this design. There, it's popped open my window, and sure enough, you can see it acting upon that master. And if I grab the master, it turns the knob, because they're both the same object for all practical purposes. Now, it might be that you want to limit the user, the end user, to not allow him to drive the channels all the way down or all the way up. Maybe you want to limit him to no more than -30 and +3 or something like that. So we go back to our layout. We make sure that that is indeed selected. We change the min and max properties. You have to do the min and max after you paste in your object, though. You can't do it beforehand. So let's say no more than +3, no more than -30. All right, so now I've got the range there is all they can get out of that. Let's test that right now. And that test value is whatever level I set this to. That's the minimum. Now, did you see it jump? If you were looking at the slider, you saw it jump. That was because this was already at its minimum position, yet the slider itself could be some value quite a bit lower. We won't see it on the knob because it's lower than what the knob setting is. As soon as I bring it up into the range of the knob, then I have control. But if I'm below the range of the knob, that's one thing. Now, the minute a user grabs this, though, it's going to drive the level to whatever this value is. That's what we said we wanted it set for. And as soon as I touch it and start to even grab it and move it, it jumps immediately to the -30 settings. So I've got a master that is on my Qes Creator form, and this is what I'm going to be showing to the user. I've decided that I want to also have that same master appear on this form here, this panel. So let's go back to design layout, if we will, for a moment. And let's take a look at that. Now, go back to design test for a moment. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If I click here, remember we have a hotspot over here. See the cursor change? Because I have a hotspot over this general area of the right seating and the left seating. If we click on that, it actually pops up a panel that has that left and right level on it. And remember, this is the individual channels that we had assigned over here when we did the master level control. So my master knob controls those levels. But when this master panel, I might not want the user to get access to these individual channels. I might want him to only have access to the master knob. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this panel only visible to an administrator of the system, and when this panel is visible, he can control not only the master level, but he can also control the individual channels. So how would we go about doing that? Well, go back to my layout mode again, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and place that same object on this screen, just because I can. So I'm going to go ahead and widen this out a little bit, and I'm going to copy this block and that label, and I'm just going to right click on them and say copy, paste them right onto the form. Of course they're going to be too narrow, I mean too big for the form, so I'm going to make them a little bit narrower. Put that one there, put this one here, and let's change the label of this one guy. So instead of saying right side, it's going to say master. And let's put a slider. Let's just grab the slider. Oh, I got to copy it. And paste him onto here. Let's try that again. Copy. paste it onto the panel. And just slid him there. I don't have a master mute. Let's put a button there that's going to be a master mute function. So we'll go to my buttons. I'll actually need two buttons on there. I'll need one for master mute and one for master unmute. Usually master functions you want to have two buttons for because you don't know what the state is of all the controls underneath it. So I'm going to grab a button here and another button. And let's make a global preset that one button will be master mute, one button will be master unmute. So the way we're going to do that is I'll go back to Venue Manager and go to this panel, unmark my objects, my entire config, use the tool again while this button is pushed in, and I'll mark that object and that object, or you could say mark for snapshot just as well and it'll do the same thing. Oh, they're all selected, that's why it's doing that. I have to unselect all of them first. There we go. Now I'll mark it and mark it. Those two are marked, and that's going to be part of a snapshot that I'm going to save. In the state they're in right now is muted amp, and this one's going to be unmuted amps. Now that's just for that rack. Let's go over to this one, do the same thing. Mark that for snapshot. Oh, I got to unmark everything first. Mark that for a snapshot. Mark that for a snapshot. And make sure that that also is stored as muted, and in this state store that as unmuted, and then I'll go back and make two more global presets. New global preset. This one's going to be all muted, and it's going to talk to both units. Specifically go to the muted snapshot, whatever it was that was created. I'm not going to fire off a master level at this point. I'll just say finish, and I'll make a new one all unmuted. And I can check that real quick with all unmuted, which they already were, and all muted, and indeed it does fire off the controls as we want it. All unmuted is what I want. Okay, so I know those global presets are going to work there. So I'll go back to Venue, Qes Creator, and for those two buttons I'll click this button, and this one's going to say recall all muted, and this one is going to recall all unmuted. Now, unfortunately, we don't have the ability in this release to label these actual objects. It'd be nice to label them right on the button itself, but we can certainly put a label down below it. Let me make sure that this block here, this outline, is behind everything. Okay, so I'm going to put in a new label, and that label, I'm just going to draw something here for now. I'll move it in a moment. And this is going to be the text is going to be let's just say mute for that one. I'll put it right there. And notice that it has a border around it. I don't have to have a border around it. I can change the border width to 0 or the border color to transparent, whichever makes the most sense to me. It doesn't really matter which one you use. The end result's the same. Now there's no border, apparent border around that particular object. Whoops, it went too narrow. Okay. And I'll copy that with a Control-C, Control-V. It's going to warn me that some are outside the area, and that particular one fell off the screen, so I'm going to have to change the X and Y coordinates. Let's change this to 100 and 100. And that should put it in the middle of my screen somewhere. Yeah, there it is. So that's a good way. That's a good trick for finding objects that you've dropped off the screen. You're not sure where they're at. This one we're going to say unmute. And of course, because that was too wide, I have to either widen that out or change the actual font. Let's go to something a little bit narrower. There's an actual Arial Narrow font that actually works pretty good. So that's Arial Narrow 10. And that gives me an unmute. And there we got my two fonts. Let me make my box just a little bit wider to encompass it. Now, there's my master mute, my master unmute button for that. We don't have a master meter function yet, so that probably wouldn't make any sense to put anything like that in there at this time. One thing I can do is I could select all of these faders, and I can go ahead and display the range and put marks, and if I want to, I could even put values underneath those marks and display it thusly, but I'm going to choose not to put the values underneath, just to keep them that size for now. And we can test that out now. Well, we haven't done anything with this. This is just a, yeah, that's the master. So I can test that, and that should indeed work all four. And if I go back to my main layout and click on this link, it should pop it up as a separate panel. And sure enough, we see that that's also related to the master value up there too. Now, keep in mind that we don't want this panel accessible in this example, maybe by the end user. So in the layout mode, I'm going to go to Tools, and I'm going to go to Options to either show tabs or not show tabs. Let's hide the tabs. We don't need to see the tabs at all. The user doesn't need to know that this is the main screen, this is the speaker. We don't need to see that. So I'm going to hide those out. And the other thing that I'm going to show is on the security, admin has access to everything. But we're going to add a new user to this. And the user is going to be some guy named Joe. And maybe I let Joe change his own password, maybe not. The default password for all users is QSC, but you can reset those to something else if you want to. If I make Joe an administrator, he gets access to everything. So this is all grayed out. It's just known. He gets access to everything. But if I don't make him an administrator, I can pick and choose which functions he has access or not. So that other panel we have called speaker levels, I might only give him the ability to look at the screen but not control anything, or maybe even not even access the screen at all. So let's leave it on no access for a moment so you can see during the running of this application, see how that affects it. So I'm going to say OK to this window and OK to that. There I've got both users were on that screen. Let me line these buttons back up the way I wanted to. So I'm going to line the, actually I want the tops of those all lined up. we go. Okay, and I think you see that there's hotspots there, so I'll go ahead and make those hotspots the same size as the buttons. Some people actually make them a little smaller than the button so that the mouse truly has to be inside the button to control anything. Personal choice. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. Okay, so there I've got my 3 buttons at the bottom and master level control way at the top. Okay, so let's test this one more time, make sure it's going to work the way we want to. We launch it. There's the main screen. Of course, the user will be able to play with this during runtime. You'll see this. We can get this right down to the screen size we need it to be. And we have this 2 buttons down here, so we can't get rid of those at this point. But during runtime, you'll be able to resize this window appropriately. So there's my level control. You can, of course, like we've been doing, we can certainly go check make sure it is controlling all 4 of those levels. So there's my level control. If the user is allowed to get into this screen, he can go and further tweak or balance the system out as appropriate. Mute, unmute, firing off the master levels. Even if I get a mixed up state, this is why you've got to have a separate mute. Now, you ask yourself, well, what does the user want to do? Does he still want to mute all the channels, or does he want to unmute all the channels? So that's why you have a button that says unmute, and we know it's going to unmute all the channels. Whereas if it was a mixed state like that, and I click the mute button, it'll mute all the channels. So it's a master mute and a master unmute. Okay, so now we're ready to take this into live mode. We're going to actually connect up to some gear, synchronize our design to the real equipment, and troubleshoot it and get it working and make sure everything works the way we expect it to. So that'll be the final tutorial on discovering and mapping your devices, synchronizing to them, and then finally, of course, troubleshooting and distributing your final product.